Today, I am so excited to start a new book study through the book of James. That's coming up next on The Beat. Hey everyone, my name is Parr. Thank you all so much for tuning into The Beat. If this is your first time here on this channel, we answer frequently asked questions about the Christian faith. We talk about dating and relationships from a Christian perspective, and we do all sorts of other Bible-based videos as well. So if you're new here, consider subscribing. So it's been a while since we have taken a verse-by-verse detailed look at a book of the Bible. I believe the last one we did was the book of Philippians, and so I chose this time around to use the book of James. The reason for this is because James is literally the most practical book in the entire New Testament, and it is also only 5 chapters, so it won't take us very, very long to get through. I'm so excited about this book, and what I want to do in this video is simply give you the background to the book of James, and then in the next video, we will jump into chapter 1. Okay, so let's first talk about the author of the book of James. Who is James? Well, there are actually 4 people in the New Testament with the same name, James, but actually only 2 of them are considered to possibly be the author of this book. The first is a guy named, James, who happened to be the brother of the Apostle John, who those 2 guys were referred to as the sons of thunder, the sons of a guy named Zebedee, although most scholars do not believe that this James is the author of this particular book. The other James is actually the brother of Jesus Christ himself. Jesus actually had a couple of brothers, Jude and James, and it is this James that most biblical scholars agree wrote the book of James. So what do we actually know about this guy named James? Well, first of all, early in Jesus' ministry, James, along with all the other people of his family, rejected Jesus Christ and his ministry. But we know at some point during Jesus' earthly ministry, before the day of Pentecost in Acts chapter 2, James was converted to be a believer of his brother, Jesus Christ. According to 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 7, it is James who saw Jesus Christ being resurrected after he was crucified 3 days later. And so this very well could be the time when James placed his faith in Jesus Christ. Thirdly, according to Acts chapter 12, verse 17, James was probably the most prominent leader within the early church. And then finally, tradition tells us that James, along with many other first century Christians, was martyred or killed because of his faith in Jesus Christ. The tradition actually teaches us that he was stoned to death. The second question we want to ask is, who was James actually writing this letter to? Well, he actually tells us that in James chapter 1, verse 1, he says, I'm writing this letter to the 12 tribes that have been scattered among the nations. So a little bit of background here. During this time, particularly in the first couple of centuries, it was not safe to be a Christian. Many of them were getting killed, they were getting martyred, they were getting persecuted. And so as a result, many of them spread and left town because they were afraid for their lives. And so James writes this letter to encourage them to endure in the midst of their difficulties and their trials. Thirdly, we want to ask, when exactly was this letter of James written? Well, scholars believe actually that the letter that James wrote is the earliest, the first New Testament book that was ever been written somewhere around 45 to 50 AD. Next, we want to ask the question, well, why did James write his letter? Once again, he wrote this letter primarily to encourage the people who were dealing with severe trials, to remind them to resist temptation, to remind them to not just be hearers of the word, but to be doers of the word, to remind them not to just be religious, but to put their faith into action and to say, hey, you know what? Faith is great, but faith without works is dead. In the midst of their difficulties, trials and tribulations and persecutions, James comes alongside of them to encourage them and to exhort them to communicate with one another in a healthy way. And finally, why is this book so valuable to the Christian, and why is it so practical, and why is it I want to go through this book with you? It's because of the vast topics and subjects that are covered in this book. You have trials, you have temptations, you have being a good listener, you have dealing with anger, you have worldliness, you have the subject of favoritism and prejudice, you have the importance of dealing with the poor, you have how to tame your tongue and how to communicate with people in a healthy way, you have drawing near to God in intimacy, you have judging one another, you have patience and suffering and prayer and accountability, and all of these amazing topics and subjects that are so practical and relevant to the Christian life. So family, I am looking forward to leading you through this study of the book of James. The next video that you will see will start us in James chapter 1. If you like this video, hit the like button. Don't forget to share it with your friends. Be sure and subscribe. Check out some of the other videos while you are here. Hey, thank you all so much for watching. I can't wait to see you in the next video.